Hi, morning, Dean. How are you this morning?
Hi, Chris. How are you? You good?
Yeah, all good. Thanks very much. This must be a fascinating period of time for you now as you start planning for reopening. I mean, how do you see the market now as it starts to come back?
Well, it's troubling as it is exciting. I think most people in business get excitement out of trying to stay alive and almost kind of back up the fact why they're doing it in the first place. So if it was too easy, everyone would be doing it. It's one of those kind of metaphor type of conversations. So as weird as it sounds, I always feel like I'm re-justifying the fact that I can run a business. But dear me, I mean, anyone that can steer through this. Just before coming on this, I read about Rick Stein closing 2 of his restaurants. Now, there's someone who's, absolutely world-renowned, knows what they're doing in business, great restaurants, and he's having to close 2. I think so. So whilst I'm saying the excitement's there, it's not really. It's troubling. It's a troubling time for sure.
No, it's certainly been very sad, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think I can go back to your first point of what I see and what I'm feeling. I think ideally, obviously, for me, I just want to see bums back on seats, people going back to work. I did a drive in this morning around sort of Green Park area, and it's quite evident that at that time in the morning there wasn't the beeper horns or the, getting snarled up in traffic. It just wasn't there. A bit later in the morning, there was some footfall, but you could see everyone's very cautious. So I think things are coming back. It's just how long that will take to get back, I think. And so I think what we've lost is the urgency. There's no urgency for anything at the moment. People aren't racing around delivering or getting to meetings. Obviously, we're doing all this. So I think for me, the urgency has dropped off. And what does that mean? Does that mean, I like to think on my feet when things are quite busy and rash. Sorry, let's get the lights back on. That's the thing about having. Sorry. That's the thing about having sustainable lighting. If you're not moving around the room, give me a second. I'll just turn them on. Hang on, Chris. There you
go. Perfect.
Right. Goes again. We'll just do it in the dark. So I think that that's the overall picture I see for the moment.
Okay. I think one of the things we've been talking about a couple of days ago is actually you see different stages coming back. The majority of people we got when we're talking to clients, they see the public transport's their biggest challenge to reassure people it's okay to come back into London.
Sort of looking at this morning. I mean, there was people coming out of Green Park Station. I had a quick look down there because I had the luxury of driving in this morning, but everyone was coming out with face masks. So I think if people can adhere to that, they can get themselves in. So let's get everyone back to work. And the 3 stages of kind of like, as we see it, I think everyone's talking about phases, but there is this very, very cautious, almost kind of like I think most of these companies are letting in the framework team. It's the people who are going to manage the buildings, people who are going to manage teams, people that are going to have to help work and set up the new office, whatever that looks like, moving tables around, setting out markers, putting down, spacing and notices. Those are the guys that are coming first and almost kind of like test the space. And then I think you'll start to see, as they feel more confident, hopefully their conversation back to their colleagues will hopefully warm that invite up to come back in, and it's safe to do so. But I think there's that the office is segmented now. I think they're going to have teams of people, and the red team, blue team, or whatever. I think you'll see a lot of that. And we've been talking to quite a few consultants globally in workshops. And I think what the overriding thing is that when things do settle back in stage 3, it will be different, and it will be different because the work that we kind of do, on our laptops or general work will be done from home now, and the play and the collaboration and the joining the teams together will happen at work, and that creates some exciting opportunities, but some big challenges for people that have got setups where they've got a rigid format And I think probably in time, those formats will need to change. But also I think there's a bit of me that thinks when people get back and they get used to how things are, they'll quickly forget. And they'll just, so some establishments will just carry on as if nothing's happened. So I think it'll be a mixed bag.
Yeah, I mean, that's the view I think we're getting, is that actually there's two schools of thought. One is once it gets back, it'll be just as though nothing ever happened. I think that's probably a bit unlikely. But I do think how offices are used will be different, and that's going to challenge the traditional model, isn't it? Because it's going to be much harder for the traditional model to operate as it was, which I assume opens doors for yourself.
Yeah, I'd watched, it was some months back now, but they opened up the Ford plant. I forget his name now, the CEO of Compass, and he was showing how they had opened it up, and I just saw this tape everywhere around this beautiful staff restaurant. I was like, I would give my right arm to run a place like that. And I thought it's quite sad, really, that you won't be able to do that. And how long will a client afford you the space to have taped off? I don't think very long, because they need that space now for just, even if you're not working, for space for people to sit at a safe distance and away from each other. So I think that's going to play a big part.
No, it's going to be interesting. And in terms of the virus for you, in terms of lockdown, how has it impacted on you personally?
In terms of the what, sorry?
In terms of lockdown, how has it impacted on you?
Greatly. I mean, like everyone else, we had a lot of our business, people know we look after a lot of tech firms, and they were quite quick to react. They kind of deserted the ship probably 5-6 weeks before Boris did the official lockdown. So we were already operating at 20%, 15% of what we used to do. And ordinarily on a good day, we were doing between 6,000-7,000 meals or units a day. And on the last day, we were doing 35,
Wow.
which was, it was tragic. Had to let the team go. And at that time, we didn't have the furlough agreement in, and I was very, very worried. The furlough agreement came in, which was great, which means we could save some jobs. And we stepped away for a week. I got upset, frustrated, came back into the kitchen, walked around it, opened up a freezer. And we don't do really frozen food, but what we do have is a freezer full of backup stuff in case, for whatever reason, we can't produce a meal one day. And I said, well, let's see if we can get rid of this food to the neighborhood or people that are vulnerable or isolated. And that's what we did. And on the first Friday, we put out 400 meals, and it's just built from there. And I think we're up to about 28,000 meals now. So this is all for shelters in the borough of Southwark. So there's people that are sheltering, that are isolated, shielding. And I did the first drop, took the van out on the very first weekend. It was a very eerie feeling driving around London. And after I'd seen a lot of these people who were so thankful to see me and some food, I came back to the kitchen and I cried like a baby, I can tell you, because I suddenly realised the enormity of, not because of COVID, but of what's out there, the dire situation that people face on a day-to-day basis, through hardship, just through circumstance. There was one guy, the story I'll never forget, and he'd just come back from a triple heart bypass, and his care package had fell through from when he came home. And he had no way of leaving his flat for food. He had no independence, he had no family, he had no relatives, no friends, nothing. So it just struck a chord with me, and I thought, God, we've got to be able to do something good out of this. And thankfully, over the last couple of months, which I can't take credit for, my team have been brilliant. They've been in volunteering, put themselves in harm's way, delivering food. We've even got, which was a great moment, the Southwark Fire Brigade, Black Watch or Blue Watch, to come in with all their gear and help us distribute the food, which was just a really lovely moment. So it's different services pulling together for the greater good. And it's funny, I look at the asset of what we got, which is a 20,000 lump kitchen. Sorry, it's gone off again.
Don't worry, I can see you quite happily.
Yeah, and we put that to use. We've got great people that can cook good food, and we've got people out there that are, do need to see some nutritional food, and that's what we did. Yeah.
I mean, the industry really has stepped forward during this period of time, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been brilliant. I mean, I've talked to so many people in the trade, And I know I've talked to you on this on many occasions, and it does seem hospitality has really sort of taken it by the bull by the horns kind of thing, use their best assets. And I just hope that's reflected back in the gestures from government, because we've got this creeping deadline of furlough, businesses aren't open, businesses folding, clients unsure around what to do. There needs to be some backup, and I hope that comes back and supports us. I think just like anyone else, praying that that's the case.
Oh, look, it's certainly going to be a challenging 6 months, I think it's fair to say. And how do you view the future? How do you view the future? How long do you think it'll take back for you to get back to what you were doing pre-lockdown?
I think realistically, anything over 12 or 18 months at the moment. When this all first started kicking off, having gone through 2008, 2009, I'd learned a few lessons that if you think it's going to be a couple of months, add 6 or 9 to it. This is a wider, bigger global issue. So I think it's 12 months, 18 months plus for things to return to some sort of normality, whatever that looks like. In my view, anyway.
No, I think that's the general consensus. At the end of 2021 is probably when we get back to normal.
Yeah.
You mentioned obviously 2008, 2009, because actually that was a profound time for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean we'd only just got going. I'd set up on my own. I'd gone in house to work with a bank or stockbrokers at the time, and then I went to go out on my own, and they helped me set up. And the funny thing was that they then got bought by the Icelandic bank. And then everything I did after that point was Icelandic. I mean, I couldn't move for doing more work Icelandic, which was great at the time. I mean, I kind of like feel embarrassed now, but it was like printing money. I thought, this is great. I've made it. And then in 2008, it came crashing down, and we had to wave goodbye to 25, 28 of very good handpicked staff. And we were left just with the 3 of us. And for 4 years, I got on the train every morning at 4:30 and didn't take a salary. And I did that for a reason, because I felt that I had kind of fluked the start of it, my career in running a business. And I had learned some huge lessons in that spate of time. I learned more lessons through trying to stay in business than I did trying to achieve business, which sounds a weird thing. But now, where I'm sat now, obviously in the dark, but is that you need to have gone through things in order to get you where you are. I know everyone always talks about it, and it's you think, well, yeah, that's obvious, but in my opinion, a better business or a better run business is someone that's had nearly gone to the brink a few times. And we're not in that state now. We're good. We have good cash, we have good understanding with clients, and we have a good model that I think will re-enter strongly in the next couple of months. So
because that's the really interesting thing. You've almost carved out your own niche in the marketplace, haven't you, in the last 5-6 years?
Yeah, I mean, due to 2008, 2009, the reason we went into delivery then was because we couldn't, as a young business, get into what I call like a standard traditional contract for lots of different reasons. We didn't have the buying power to, buy a can of Coke at 17p or whatever it was. And that wasn't attractive to some of our clients. And what I was trying to convince them at the time was, look, forget about the cans of Coke, just pay us well for the food and have good food, and we'll deliver it in, and we'll take that cost away from the model. And it worked for us, because then we knew that whatever we were pitching at, we had to make our money on. It was very easy to control. And from an early point, when we started working on areas like that, we realized that we could almost like a harmonica sort of go in and out with the business, what was in front of us, and reduce our costs if it was low, and then the cost just climbed as we grew. And it just seemed a good model. I didn't know why no one else was doing it, really. I mean, you had events and you had sandwich drop-offs and things like that, but there was no one kind of doing the contract and delivery, which is kind of, as I say, one client grew into another one, and we then got recommended, and the rest is history, really.
But I think that's one of the things about you. It was occurs you are quite lateral in how you think about things. You're a problem solver, aren't you, by nature?
Yeah, I think my problem-solving skill has been put to the test just recently. But
No,
I think, yeah, I guess I've got that skill. But I kid you not, Chris, but I've got a very good team around me, and everyone needs a good team. And whilst I challenge them, if they weren't there, I would be half the person I am, because they are the ones that will go and almost like. It's hard to describe, but I'll come up with the dreamscape ideas, and then they'll come back and tell me what we can do.
Fair enough. So where's your motivation come from? Because you're obviously very driven. So what has been your motivation in that?
Well, my mum and dad run businesses all their lives. My dad was quite an entrepreneur. My mum had clothes shops. We had a hotel. We had pubs. And quite from an early age, I was at school where I worked out the tuck shop was only open for a small amount of time, and everyone had this craze of these little things called laser bars. But the shop up the street was the only place that sold them, and you had to use your whole break time to go and get these laser bars. So because we had the cash and carry card that you had, it probably still exists, cash and carry card. I was going with my dad one day in the aisles and I said, laser bars. So he lent me the money to buy boxes and boxes of this stuff. I then rammed it in my locker at school and started peddling my wares from the locker, which was going great guns until I got caught. I was summoned to the headmaster, and my dad was brought in, and it actually ended quite well, because the headmaster was saying this is disgraceful. My dad challenged him and said, well, no, you got a problem. You've got kids that are going off site just to go and get sweets. He's making sure they're on site to get on time to lessons. We flipped it round. And I then ended up being the tuck shop curator in bringing it to life in a better format. So, I mean, it was always in me, washing cars from an early age. My dad, again, he kind of backed me up. He lent me the money to buy my first bucket, chamois, sponges, and showed me how to do it properly. So don't overcharge, be polite, be nice, do a good job, make sure everyone's happy. And then I built my round up, and then I ended up having 4 or 5 of my friends working for me on the round because I couldn't get round all the cars.
Oh, brilliant.
So I don't know. I think it's naturally in you to want to do that. Yeah, sometimes I do wish that I was just happy not doing it, because as I'm sure many people out there that run their own businesses know, it looks all great from the outside, but there's some demons on the inside, and you have your own struggles of life, and you want the best for your family, your friends, and the people working for you. I think, to cap it off, I think the best thing that no one tells you about running your own business actually is that you're a custodian of the staff you look after. You look after their careers and their development for a certain amount of time, and no one really kind of explains that. And when you own that, it's quite a weight. It's quite and it's a good weight as well as a bad weight. And you think, my word, somebody has entrusted me with their career, and you don't get that very often. I think that is, when you're running a business, that is something, and I treasure that probably more than anything.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that really stands out about Fooditude is the team you've built and how motivated they are, because you've actually trusted in young people, haven't you?
Yeah, I think we kind of handpick quality, I guess. In the early days, it was necessity. I was kind of, and I don't mind admitting, it was a bit of cash to get people that were working in other jobs to come and help me on functions, because I knew they were good, and I had to kind of almost pay my way and lose on the jobs more often than not. I was making sure everyone had a nice drink session after, or they got taxis back home. I treated everyone that came into the business early, royally, and I always have done. And I think that kind of earmarked, when clients could see how happy our staff were, they were kind of like, why are they so happy? Why are they, I just looked after them. It's not just about the cash. It's not just about getting taxis home. I treated them as part of the business, and they're incorporated into the fabric of what we do and what I'm trying to achieve. And whilst they're with us, we have some people that join us from an agency, maybe for 4 hours. And if I'm in earshot or a manager's nearby, I'll stop, say hello, and I'll say, look, for today, forget you're from an agency. Today you're working with us. You're a Fooditude member, and this is how we like to work, and this is how we like to react to things. And these are the 5 kind of principles of the company and what I expect from you today, and what you'll get from me and my team. And if you don't, come and see me at the end of the shift and let me know, because it's important we uphold that.
No, that's really interesting. So coming to the end of our time, but what's your aspirations for the future as we come out? What are you hopeful for now?
I'd love to see business return back to normal. I think everyone's clamoring for that at the moment. I think what's been quite nice is that competition, there isn't any at the moment. Everyone's helping each other out, and I hope that carries on. I know it can't in some aspects, because you've got your own IP and you've got your own targets and what you want to achieve as a business. But I think there's been a lot of fairness and openness recently, and I've been quite encouraged by that, especially by some of the bigger companies and the bigger leads in our field. I think that's been quite something. Personally, I just would like to see our brand grow. I think I would be a fool if I sat here and said I didn't want to see it do well. I hope it does. We're doing a lot of, the tragedy of where we are at the moment, that the redundancies are there to manage, unfortunately. And that's hard when you're actually then repivoting the business to go after more work, but you need a different team to do that. And that's difficult. Yeah.
No, I can understand that.
Mm.
Well, I certainly wish you well, Dean. I think you've carved out a very special niche in the market. I have no doubt you'll come back very strongly. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.